All right, welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a question that sounds, well, super simple on the surface. But for philosophers, it is an absolute rabbit hole of fascinating ideas. So let's just jump right in. What is an object? No, seriously, take a second. What's the first thing that pops into your head when you hear that word? On the surface, this feels like the easiest question in the world, right? You're probably thinking of stuff like a rock, your phone, maybe a sandwich, just physical things you can see and touch. And honestly, that's a perfect place to start. But, and this is where it gets fun, the moment you try to nail down a real, solid definition for object that covers everything, the whole thing just kind of falls apart. It turns out this simple-sounding word points to one of the most confusing categories in all of philosophy. Okay, so this leads to what philosophers call the umbrella view. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. Imagine a giant umbrella that covers, well, everything. Not just a star or a planet, but also things like the number 7, the feeling of happiness, the concept of justice. If it exists in any way, shape, or form, boom, it's an object. It all fits under the umbrella. And right there, that's the big problem. I mean, think about it. What's the point of a category if everything fits inside it? The whole reason we have categories is to sort things out, to draw a line between what's in and what's out. If there's nothing outside the category, is it even doing anything useful? So this whole everything problem, it's not just some navel-gazing exercise. It's actually why philosophers get super wary about these all-encompassing terms. Because when you start trying to talk about everything, you can walk right into some pretty deep logical traps. So this wariness really comes down to 3 big things. First, that lack of distinction we just mentioned. A category for everything doesn't help you slice up reality in any meaningful way. Second, you can end up tying yourself in some wild logical knots, creating paradoxes when you try to make statements about all things. And third, and maybe worst of all, the whole thing can just turn into an argument about words, not about what's actually real. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The famous logician Gottlob Frege, he basically said the same thing. His take was that object might just be too fundamental, too simple to even define. It's like trying to define the color blue. It's a basic building block of how we think, not something you can break down into smaller pieces. So all this caution, all this wariness, it kind of forces us to flip the whole question on its head. Instead of asking what an object is, maybe the better question is, what isn't it? And this is what's known as the contrast question. And honestly, this is where things get really interesting. Because if that umbrella view is wrong, if not everything is an object, then that must mean there's something else out there. It means there has to be such a thing as a non-object. So what in the world could that be? All right, so where do we even start looking for these non-objects? Well, our first clue comes from a classic philosophical idea, the great divide between objects and their properties. The basic idea here is to split reality into 2 buckets. You've got things, and then you've got the ways those things are. So a bacon sandwich is a thing, it's an object. But its properties, like being salty or delicious or crispy, those aren't objects themselves, they're qualities that the object has. And when you really dig into this, you see just how different they are. An object, right? It's a concrete thing in one spot at one time. But a property like redness, that's abstract. It can be in a million places all at once, on a stop sign, a fire truck, an apple. You can't reach out and touch redness by itself. They really seem to exist in completely different ways. Okay, so properties are one really strong candidate for being a non-object, but they're not the only game in town. Our second clue shifts gears completely, moving away from abstract qualities and towards something a lot more personal, our own consciousness. So this time, the dividing line isn't between a thing and its qualities. No, it's between an it and a you. The key difference here is subjectivity, the fact that there is a conscious being, an experience, a point of view. And you can think about this divide in 2 really cool ways. The first way is pretty straightforward. An object is simply anything that is not a conscious subject. A rock doesn't feel or think, so it's an object. Easy enough. But the second way, that one's a little more mind-bending. Here, an object is anything that is experienced by a subject. And under this view, you, a subject, can totally become an object of my experience, and vice versa. Okay, so we've looked at properties, we've looked at subjects, 2 totally different ideas for what a non-object could be. So, which one is it? What's the right answer? Well, what if that's the wrong question? The big takeaway here is that maybe these ideas aren't competing for the same trophy. It's better to think of them as different lenses. Each one gives us a powerful and totally valid way to slice up reality and make sense of, well, everything that exists. And that really brings us right back to the beginning and right back to you. This entire philosophical puzzle about objects and non-objects, it ultimately forces us to figure out where we fit in. So if a rock is an object and kindness is a property, what are you? Are you a subject, an object of experience, a thing with properties? It just goes to show you how a simple little word can lead to some of the biggest questions of all.